Hello there.
Hello there.
Dear viewer, welcome back to Oblivion class restoration project, where every little bit of OP is deserved, so that you can brag to your peers, partners and spouses about how awesome your Skyrim character is, which is of course the best way to gain their respect. Today's build is the Crusader, one that I really enjoyed in Oblivion but never really played properly in Skyrim. Obviously, the Crusader is a heavily armored battle mage specialized in dealing with the undead, but with some Vokrii perks, he can also become extremely effective against spellcasters. That's thanks to the mace perks, and generally extremely strong against everything because of how much beating you can withstand without breaking a sweat when you perk both heavy armor and restoration. With the mods I'm using, if I was to make a Crusader not dictated by the Oblivion character class, I would most likely abandon the distraction skill completely and focus instead on the harmful applications of the restoration magic. But since it is the Oblivion class restoration project, I perked my fire spells to the full extent, and it is in fact extremely powerful. Still suits the character well, as any honest Crusader probably wishes for his enemies to burn in the fires of hell.
And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
He also gets surprisingly versatile and intricate thanks to Saint Alicia. We are going to worship her using the Wintersun mechanics, and I must say it is borderline game-breaking. Her followers have the ability to get any blessings of any of the 9 divines and boost every blessing considerably. In the end, I was, for example, able to smith up all my armor pieces and weapons to legendary quality without a single perk in smithing, and put very strong enchantments on all of it without a perk in enchanting. Furthermore, do you wish to get to 100 in a skill faster? No problem. Pray to Saint Alicia, choose the blessing of Akatosh and get a boost to all experience gain. Do you feel like you need more health? Take the blessing of Archay. Just the ability to switch between blessings on the fly could be quite a nice boon for certain builds, but you will also make each blessing more powerful as you gain your favor with Alicia, and it works with the blessed perk in restoration. Also, the blessing of Alicia herself can enhance your followers' protection against magic and weapons. Not that you need a follower, but since a character like this is likely to play through the Downguard questline, buffing Serana will be a nice option to have. The best thing is, none of it requires deviating from the Oblivion Crusader's skill list. You don't know how to make amazing armors. The gods just give you an impeccable revelation about smithing, and wabam, you have the best armor in Tamriel. Right, here is the list of gameplay modes for the build, although I must say Morningstar is not that essential. Apocalypse is, however. Sealed, Resolved and 3 Rings spells autocast from Okato's recital will increase your durability greatly. We also have a beautiful mod called Artifacts, the Breton Paladin. It's an amazing rendition of Knights of the Nine Divine Crusaders armor and weapons. You do need to complete a quest to get the items, so technically it is against the rules of the project, but I did not use any of the pre-enchanted powerful items from the mod. I created unenchanted replicas, which you can do without any perks in smithing after the quest is done, and then enchanted them myself with the divine guidance of Zenitar. For the race, we have a Breton. Reaching the maximum magic resistance was rather important to me, since it gives you a huge advantage over most evil things like vampires, warlocks and witches. For the attributes, we have 1 point of stamina per 2 of magicka per 4 of health. Whatever happens, do not put more than 5 level ups in stamina, because the respite perk will give us as much stamina as we need for power attacks. The only reason to spec in stamina at all is the fact that we are rolling with a mace and a rather heavy one-handed hammer, the Skull Crusher. A heavy investment in health goes so very well with restoration to refill your health all the time, and with heavy armor to slow down the rate of health loss. For the stone, I would suggest the Lord. As usual, you can argue that Atronach would be better, however, most of our main spells are rather cheap, so it makes magicka regeneration more valuable than sheer magicka value, so I didn't want to give up half of my regeneration. For our main skills, we have one-handed, heavy armor, restoration and destruction. I also ended up with 100 in enchanting and 90 in smithing, but no perks were taken. In one-handed, we take the entire mace branch, giving us the ability to bypass enemy armor and interrupt spellcasting, as well as preventing it for 5 seconds. The victory rush really goes well with respite from restoration, so as soon as you reach 100 you can stop thinking about your stamina. You will always have some basically. On the right hand side, from the power attack perks, take almost everything. Disarming Slash is the only one that doesn't really make much sense for the build. Maces are too slow for the disarm to happen frequently enough, and your legendary mace will deal with most enemies in 2 hits, so why bother? In heavy armor, pretty much everything but Cushioned and Face of Death will be very useful, and every perk will feel like a huge increase in power. That being said, the left branch is much more essential. Seeing people getting tired, staggered, and even flung away simply because they try to hit you is very satisfying and perfect with the circle spells from Apocalypse and vanilla cloak spells, which together mean you will inflict a tremendous amount of pain simply by standing there. Matching set is not at all necessary. You can work on your favor with Alicia for a bit longer and improve your armor more, and glancing blows is nice to have, but between your versatility and restoration skill, the Vokrii weapon perk effects will rarely be a problem for you, if at all. But going back to hurting people by standing there, you need to get Hellhoth's Disjunction in Destruction. Elemental Barrier could also be used, but it's of lower priority since you will also deal insane damage with your weapon. Maximizing the cloak spell damage is a good idea, but not very pressing. All the fire perks were also taken, so your flame cloak will create some insane loop of corpses burning and dealing damage to the next enemy who's stupid enough to attack you in melee. The Scourge Earth perk is doing this, and it turns out it works insanely well with a stationary combat style of the Crusader. If you don't move too much, the burning corpses will just keep piling up around you, creating a rather scary loop of fiery death. And for the restoration, this is the skill that will make you just perfect.
Perfection.
The Blessed perk will give you 50% more duration and effectiveness of divine blessings. I know I already said it, but it's simply insane when combined with the worship of Alicia. Intervention, bringing you back to full health when you would normally die, is a cherry on top of your all durability and defense.
Good evening. Good evening.
It can happen only once every 20 minutes, but it is highly unlikely you are gonna need it more often than that. The Respite perk allows you to focus more on health in your attribute choices, and the Eternal Flame perk is another way to survive more beating. You could also go for the Necromage, as we should be super strong against undead. Whether you will take 1 or 2 ranks of Inspire depends entirely on whether or not you like to take a follower for your adventures, but you have to get to the Necromage perk somehow. Also, Alicia likes you to have a follower and supports followers, so probably to farm up the favor with her, it's a good idea to have a follower, at least in the early game. And then all the perks on the left, Harm, Sun's Judgment, and most importantly, Rebuke Undead, will also be useful, but the main goal is the top of the branch, so the Rebuke Undead perk. Since you will also have the option to use powerful fire spells, you can decide to take only 1 rank of Sun's Judgment, but I took both of them just because some enemies have very high resistance to fire and pretty much nothing has resistance to sun damage. Rebuke Undead converts the turn undead spells into an extremely lethal weapon, instantly disintegrating any undead below 35% of health. With the Hollowed Strikes from Odin, which will deal 80 points of damage to undead with each power attack and also count as a turn undead spell. So with the sun damage of your aura, 80 points of damage on your mace and another 80 with power attacks. Then with the fact that undead will evaporate at 35% of health, well, you know what will happen then. The undead will just melt around you.
Perfectly
Valid.
This whole thing should be.
I think, however, that you need the Odin Vokrii compatibility patch for the Hallowed Strikes to benefit from the perk. And we also have one of the cheapest tricks you can do with Apocalypse Restoration. Using the Novice spell of Wild Healing and Harm perk, you will heal yourself and then the spell will bounce to a random person, be it friend or foe. With Harm, it will heal your friends but harm your enemies. And with Respite, the spell will heal your stamina too. So against most enemies, it will be a good choice to simply use one of your cloak spells and then cast Wild Healing repeatedly in between power attacks, because it heals you, solves your stamina problem, and can deal decent damage. So it's almost like shield bashing, but better, because it heals you and also gives you stamina instead of taking your stamina. Okay, I almost forgot about the combo with the Circle of the Moons spell and the Wildfire spell. It is a very useful one when you are surrounded and therefore you have a lot of people that you can fit into your Circle of the Moons, absorbing magicka from all of them, and then the usually very expensive spell of Wildfire costs you effectively nothing because you regain magicka so swiftly, so then you can just spit the flames pretty much endlessly as long as there is anyone in the circle. And with your fire cloak spell on, you will also have increased damage on Wildfire, and you can just turn around constantly and spit the flames against many enemies. Rather cool, and it is a last moment discovery. I was almost done recording. And here's the list of enchantments. On the armor and apparel we have Fortify Restoration, Amplify Restoration, Fortify Magicka, Recharge Weapons, and twice Fortify One-Handed. I doubled down on Fortify One-Handed because it turned out pretty early that this build would be very good for legendary difficulty, so every little bit helps to make the fights shorter. The Recharge Weapons on the ring is mostly a roleplay choice. I thought binding all those souls to some shiny toys could create a heavy conflict of conscience in a character like this, so creating this ring was like a statement: this far and no further. If you don't care about such things or imagine your Crusader differently, I would go either with another Fortify Restoration or Link Health and Magicka. The latter could probably yield a lot of power given the high health of the build, especially that I mostly used the super enhanced Blessing of Arcay. We also have two weapons, one for the undead and one for everything else. For the undead we have the mace enchanted with sun damage. For everything else we have the Skull Crusher replica enchanted with the Fire Hazard spell, which combines very nicely with Wildfire and all the distraction perks. And here's the list of spells. We have Sealed Resolve, 3 Rings, and Troll's Blood cast at the start of each fight with Okato's Recital. We have Anti-Undead spells, Standard's Aura, Vampire's Bane, and Hallowed Strikes. As mentioned, these work perfectly with the Rebuke Undead perk. For the healing itself, with your perks and the Amplify Restoration enchantment, you should need no more than fast healing, unless you go with a companion, a follower, in which case Grant Healing will be useful too. From the distraction spells we need Fire Hand, Flame Cloak, and Wildfire. You can obviously use more fire spells, but these are enough to burn everything around you, and especially in front of you. Fire Hand is super effective for your combat style since you have no interest in keeping your distance, as spell dealing a lot of damage in close range is a blast, pun intended. I would also suggest to unlock the Agent of Mara quest ability. It will allow you to reach max magic resistance with no items and no alchemy. And here we have it basically. This dude combines high damage output, although I have had it higher, with insane defensive abilities, durability and flexibility of the Saint Alicia worship. He has some magicka efficient spells, perfect for legendary difficulty, maybe even with some difficulty mods, I would guess. Let me know how you like the build, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe for more, and you know how it works, smash the various buttons all around, and we will see each other again. Bye.